BJP was the primary beneficiary of these bonds. And I will tell you, was 10,122 crores, nearly 60%, while the main opposition, which is our Indian National Congress, got about 1547 crores, which is roughly about 10%, while Trinamool Congress got about 823 crores, which is about 8% of all the electoral bonds. I say this is a very severe indictment because electoral bonds deals with money. Electoral bonds have financial implications. And when there is indictment of financial impropriety, this is nothing but corruption being slashed, which means BJP was trying to do corruption by the back door. The very electoral bond scheme was very opaque. People did not have the right to know who was contributing and what was the apprehension of everyone, and which the Supreme Court itself has acknowledged. The government had all access to the data. The opposition had none. Which means they knew who was contributing not only to their kitty, but they knew who was contributing to the kitty of others. And in this way, it will be interesting now to see who was harassed, who was raided, who was troubled after they had made contributions to the fund, because once the lists are out, we will be able to analyze the actions which were taken, whether by ED, whether by CBI, whether by income tax or any other agency of the central government. One more fear which we had expressed was these bonds, when you keep them hidden, when you don't reveal, these donations to political parties becomes a backdoor means to buying out political favors. Which means, in other words, it's a quid pro quo. I give, you give me back. So this is something which was most feared. I want to know, when the lists get opened out, how many of them genuinely, let us say I go to a church, I go to a temple, I go to any religious place and I make an offering. I genuinely make it because I make it out of my own free will. I think what I think is best to be given. There's nothing which they say you must give this. But we have heard where people were asking figures, percentages, and this was, if you didn't pay up, if you didn't cough up, then you would not get a tender, or you would not get a work order, or perhaps you were thereafter, I would say, hounded, and or perhaps you were discarded. I know that many years back, when Congress was not in power, in Goa, there was a recruitment of DYSPs, and someone approached me and told me they're asking 15 lakhs and they will give a receipt. And this money was being collected in the MAPSA office of a political party. I told that person, if you have the money to lose, you give it. And secondly, and most importantly, if you think of getting on into this service by this dishonest means, never again come back to me. Because should you fall in problem, your money is also. The next question I posed was, if you give the money, how would you give? Check or cash? If you give it by check, someone gives you as a donation, because that was coming, a receipt was coming, donation for political fund. So, which means it's a donation. You can't give receipt for a job, which means if you don't get, your money is sunk as donation. If you think you are going to go to the court, you are not going to be able to get it. And if you are given cash, there would be a question mark, how did you give the cash? So it's a risk, high risk you're taking. And this is why I now relate this to this electoral bond. Where is the quid pro quo? We will come to know. Quid pro quo means I give and you give me back in return. And we will also see who was being harassed. Scrapping the electoral bonds, in my view, the Supreme Court has done is stopping the loot by the BJP. In the petition, the Chief Justice of India, heading the Constitution bench, read out the two questions. A, whether amendments are violative to the right to information under Article 19(1)(a), and B, whether unlimited corporate funding violates principles of free and fair elections. And on both these points, the Supreme Court has ruled in the positive. How can citizens not know who are contributing to political parties? Whether on the basis of the contribution an airport was given, whether on the basis of a contribution a seaport was given, whether on the basis of a contribution a railway line was given, we don't know. All this will come out in public domain as we will see the lists which will be published on the websites, and we will see the chronology of the dates, we will see the chronology of the interest which the people acquire, and then we will be able to make a reasoned decision, choice, and the electorate will be well informed, and that is the right to information which the Supreme Court has upheld, that we need to know so people can decide, is this political party clean, is this political party not clean. If it has been indulging in corruption and you want this political party, then you vote them. If you don't want such kind of people, then you don't vote them. That is what the answers will come in the next part, which you will see. Finally, the Supreme Court struck down provisions of the Income Tax Act, provisions also of the Companies Act, where amendments were made to this legislation to allow this scheme to go through. But one thing I want to tell you, if you look back in history, I always make this charge, and I'm not wrong in this, that what we see here today is nothing but a parallel of Nazis, Hitler's regime. Which means, what was he doing? Once he assumed control of the Reichstag, which is the parliament, Hitler changed laws. Hitler changed laws to suit his convenience. And this is nothing different but a textbook rewriting where you change laws to suit your convenience. And then when you go to the court says, it's in accordance with law. I will give you, to make it simple, I will give you one example. The Environment Protection Act has an EIA notification. In the EIA notification, there is certain requirement that you must get this clearance, you must get that clearance. But you know you can't get it. So what do? You amend it. You amend and delete that requirement. Someone challenges in the court. The court says, by law, it is permissible because that is not required. It is deleted. You understand? So in this sequence, you first bring in these kind of provisions, which you think will be upheld by the court. Fortunately, the challenge was to the very provisions, and the Supreme Court held that these provisions were unconstitutional, and the entire electoral bond scheme was itself unconstitutional. Now the fallout of this judgment is the directions given by the Supreme Court. And I will read these directions, because these directions now will move to the next course of action, which all of us will then open our sites and be able to examine everything what goes on the websites. First it says, the issuing bank shall herewith stop the issuance of electoral bonds. Second, the State Bank of India shall submit the details of the electoral bonds purchased since the interim order of the court dated 12 April 2019 till date to the Election Commission of India. The details shall include the date of the purchase of each electoral bond, the name of the purchaser, and the denomination of the electoral bond purchased. The third direction is, the State Bank of India shall submit the details of the political parties which have received contribution to electoral bonds since the interim order dated 12 April 2019 till date to the ECI, that's the Election Commission of India. SBI must disclose details of each electoral bonds encashed by the political parties, which shall include the date of encashment and the denomination of the electoral bond. Next, fourth point. SBI shall submit the above information to the ECI within 3 weeks from today, that is by March 6th. So we will have it with the ECI by 6th March. ECI shall publish the information received from the SBI on its website by March 13, 2024. And finally, electoral bonds which are within the validity period of 15 days but which have not been encashed by the political parties yet, party to the purchaser, the issuing bank shall then refund the amount to the purchaser's account. So you see, this judgment is a sign of victory for democratic electoral process. And it's a victory for the entire nation. And I think that the government of the day and the BJP should not think that they can loot and scoop. Time that they should awaken and realize that there is a check and balance which the courts will keep. And I'm grateful that the Honorable Supreme Court performed its duty in accordance with the constitutional mandate, upholding law, washing the electoral laws.
Order conduct, it will apply to all the parties, including Congress. So, is that good for your party?
You see, who has been the biggest beneficiary? Has been the BJP. How much Congress would have got? Who would have benefited? Very few. So you see, the largest beneficiary, because you had projects coming in thousands of crores, which was definitely not being done by the Congress government. So everything will come out. It will be like the rabbit being pulled out of the hat.
Is there any possibility to amend the law against this?
This was the amended law which was called in question before the Honorable Supreme Court. To try to amend this law at this time, I don't think it will be possible. And if the government of India thinks that it can amend the law to overcome the judgment of the Supreme Court, then they have lots to hide. And this bugle which they blow, that we are corruption free and that all other political parties before us were corrupt, will stand exposed. If they are clean, what's wrong to come clean and tell us who gave you all these donations? Why should you run away? Why should you hide?